You know what's cool? Runes are cool. You can telekinetically move metal objects through space, halt the flow of time, turn water into ice pillars, and of course, blow walls and enemies and Koroks the hell up. Okay, maybe not Koroks. Throughout our time on the Great Plateau, Link visits 4 shrines where we acquire 4 runes: Magnesis, Bomb, Stasis, Cryonis. The easiest way to describe the runes of the Sheikah Slate is to think of them as tools or gadgets, while the Sheikah Slate itself is most similar to a real-life multi-tool. Though they are unnatural to Link, they can be upgraded just like his weapons and other gear. When combined with his natural abilities, the runes give Link an opportunity to reach any situation in a more well-rounded way, expanding his already proficient skill set. Throughout the whole game, they prove to be invaluable. In fact, without them, Link would probably still be stuck in that first shrine. Yes, stuck. Motionless. Progress-less. And quite honestly, if Link didn't have his handy-dandy runes, well, the game would be much shorter.
All right, everyone, we've all been there. Health is running dangerously low. You totally forgot to mix elixirs and cook more food, and you have got to get rid of this horde of monsters because they have some pretty sweet weapon upgrades and are roasting some delicious looking fish. You've managed to avoid further damage by scaling high above them, but now what? You can't possibly go back down there, not without risking death or eating through your weapons. You're stuck. So what do? Well, you do what you should always do when you feel stuck. You ask yourself, can any of my runes help me in this situation? Why, yes. Yes, they can. It'll require patience, but one way you can slowly but surely eliminate those monsters is by alternating between the round and cube bombs. In fact, the bombs, like every other rune, can be used indefinitely and they don't cut into your inventory. So not only have you succeeded in destroying the monsters, but you did so without breaking any weapons or eating through any of your inventory. Now I get it. How cool would it be to be able to move metal or stop time momentarily, all with just a click of a Sheikah button? Well, unfortunately, we don't live in that Hyrule. But not to worry, with just a little bit of interpretation, we can still greatly benefit from those runes. Yes, in our own world. So when we break it down to its most basic definition, the purpose of the runes is to provide Link with alternate ways of handling complex and challenging situations. And what's awesome is that also applies to us. Our runes can also provide us with alternate ways of handling our own complex and challenging situations. And, like the game, they're limitless in their availability and they don't depend on external sources. We're going to start with Magnesis. Grab onto metallic objects using the magnetic energy that pours forth from the Magnesis rune. Objects held in the magnetic snare can be lifted up and moved freely. When we think about Magnesis in Breath of the Wild, what we're obviously thinking about is Link's ability to move around and control metal. Now, in our world, when we equip Magnesis, what we're doing is looking at a challenging situation and asking ourselves, is there a way I can view this from a different perspective? Think back to a moment when you were examining something with the utter intensity. Maybe it's a new mini that you got, or your business card which finally got delivered. You're lifting it up, you're turning it around slowly, you're allowing your eyes to just take it in and memorize every detail. And it's in those moments that you notice beautiful things, you're admiring the craftsmanship, or you're even able to catch some small mistakes that you need correcting. Magnesis in our world allows us to look at what would often be a challenging situation, a one-sided, one-way street. This is my way or the highway. No way. What Magnesis is doing is teaching us that when we lift up and examine a situation from different angles, it not only helps us expand our perspective, but even if we don't end up taking that advice and we stick with ours, it reinforces our decisions. It means that we can say, yeah, I know why I want to do this. And that is the benefit of Magnesis. Now, Magnesis can really help us shine when it comes to conversation. We've all been there. We're either working with someone or we have a friend that we're just not seeing eye to eye with. Magnesis is often the difference between having a dialogue versus having a debate. And by allowing us to put ourselves in other people's shoes, thus allowing us to see things from their perspective, it reminds us that the other person has a perspective worth exploring, even if we don't end up agreeing with them or taking their advice. Magnesis can also help us become well-rounded, patient, and successful leaders. And the great thing is that it teaches us that we're not limited to one way of thinking. Let's move on to bombs. The force of the blast can be used to damage monsters or destroy objects. There are both round and cube bombs, so use whichever best fits the situation. Alright, so we're strolling along the Little Twin River when we hear our Sheikah sensor going off the charts. Okay, obviously this means there's a shrine somewhere nearby, we just don't know where. This is weird. We're following the beeps but don't see anything. Wait, could it be behind this wall of rocks? Though these rocks seem to be slightly worn down with cracks peppered throughout, they're lodged pretty tight within each other. No amount of ingenuity or button smashing is working. So there is but one thing left to do to get to the Totosa Shrine, and that, my friends, tends to go boom. Bombs have been a staple throughout the entire Legend of Zelda series, oftentimes seen as such an important part of what Link can have in his arsenal. They're so important, in fact, that as of today, the bombs have only been absent from one game, and that's the Adventure of Link. It's so cool how so much value can be placed into an item that has one job, to blow things away. But as fans of the game, we know that it's so much more than that. The bombs serve as a way to annihilate any obstacles that are in the way, especially situations where nothing else seems to be working. Let's bring that to our world. Sometimes there are obstacles that are just not going away, and no matter what we do and what we say, nothing is working. They are still there. When we're considering using our bombs, we're basically asking ourselves, are there any blockages that need clearing out? Whatever the case may be for you, sometimes the best solution is to clear things out and start over. Let's talk about round or cube bombs. Now, at least once we've all found ourselves in situations where poor little Link has been blown back and injured, all because we detonated the wrong bomb. When discussing the subject of bombs with Bandit, he issued a warning and a very valuable reminder.
As a powerful force, if used incorrectly, it could be detrimental to yourself or those around you.
Even when a particular situation calls for clearing out, it's so important that we are prepared. Like in the game, we have to consider all the details of the situation and how blowing things up might actually affect us. For example, it's really easy to use our bombs and just throw our hands up, screaming at the faces of everyone that's pissed you off. That would indeed be quite explosive. But would it always be serving you? Would it be clearing the path to allow further progress? Or is it just blowing things up, leaving a mess, and potentially injuring you and the other person? Now, when I was thinking about bombs, I had a really interesting thought. They're so much fun to use, but they're only really helpful in a few situations. There are, relatively speaking, a fair amount of cracked rocks that you can blow up. But when you look at every other situation, there really aren't that many out there. Similarly, I really hope that you're not in a lot of situations where the best option is to blow things up and clear them away. But sometimes we really don't have a choice. Whether it's cutting someone off, quitting a job, or moving on and starting over in a new city, sometimes clearing things out is really the only option that we have. The Legend of Zelda's inclusion of the bombs in almost every game proves that their importance cannot be overstated. When we understand that the value of the bomb is rooted in flexibility of how they work, how they clear out our path, we can use them entirely to our benefit while always minimizing any collateral damage. Stasis stops an object in time while storing its kinetic energy. The stored energy will act upon the object when the flow of time resumes. Making good use of the stored energy can move even the largest of objects. Stasis is likely the most straightforward rune that we acquire in Breath of the Wild. Now, as the definition states, it allows us to freeze an object for a period of time. We first get introduced to this rune in the Owa Daim Shrine, where we begin exploring its many capabilities. This shrine is absolutely littered with sudden drops and gaps that are way too wide for Link to simply jump over. But by using Stasis, we can freeze a cogwheel at just the right moment, and that allows us to use the once rotating platform as a bridge to get across. Now, when we reach the ramp, we see that there's this giant boulder that's rolling down towards us, right into the chasm below. Unfortunately, it resets way too quickly, and any attempt to try to race up the ramp results in us being pummeled back down. But by freezing the boulder as it passes us before it falls over the edge, we also prolong the reset, and that gives us time to dash up the ramp. These lessons make the benefits of stasis very clear. Bringing it to our world, the question we want to ask ourselves for this rune is, do I need to pause and assess? There are many successful people out there that share similar experiences of how being able to very quickly think and act has oftentimes been the make or break for them at some point in their careers. I mean, think about how many businesses executed a pivot strategy that quite literally saved their business during the pandemic. The ability to make swift decisions is at times the absolute very skill that will be the make or break of someone at some point in their careers. Stasis teaches us that even in our fast-paced world, sometimes the best decision is to simply pause, take our time, and assess things. Now, whether it's researching, learning, or testing, by familiarizing ourselves with the details of our situation, we will find solutions quicker than if we were to plow right through the problem. When we take some time to pause and assess, even the biggest challenges can be overcome. Now, there is something to the in-game description that I absolutely love about this rune. Making good use of the stored energy can move even the largest of objects. In-game, when Link freezes an object, he can hit it in succession, which increases the energy stored within it. When the stasis rune wears off, the once immobilized object is now launched forward into the air. The reason I love this application of stasis is that it takes our pause and assess period and converts it to something tangible. Now, it's no secret. The physics engine in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom continues to impress and entertain many of us. But in particular, this feature of the stasis rune is another example of an important element of physics: potential and kinetic energy. Now, if you don't know already, potential energy is energy stored in an object in relation to the zero position. Now, what I mean by zero position is if I had a rubber band, its zero position would be absolutely no tension at all. It's just sitting there. But if I stretch out the rubber band and then let it go, that stored potential energy is going to convert into kinetic energy, which is why the rubber band is going to go flying across the room, or it's going to snap against me. The amount of potential energy dictates the amount of kinetic energy. That's why the vector arrow, when we do use stasis in-game, will point further and further out the more you hit an object in stasis. This is so important for us, whether or not we're going into business for ourselves, because sometimes we get so stuck in the planning phase that we never convert our potential energy into kinetic energy. We don't end up actually producing anything. Maybe it's because we're waiting for the perfect moment, but in the end, if we don't do anything, we're not going anywhere. This is something we're going to talk more about in other videos, especially the productivity chapter, when we go on to the Triforce of Power. The stasis rune in general teaches us that not only is it important to take a moment to pause and assess, but it's also showing us that we must make good use of that time to propel us towards our goal. We are missing out on an opportunity if we don't convert what's stored within us into something fast-moving and scalable. Last but not least, we have Cryonis, or Cryonis, sorry my Greek people. Builds ice pillars that are very stable. These pillars can be used as stepping stones or as obstacles. Use Cryonis on an ice pillar to break it. Now, at first glance, when I was talking to Bandit about Cryonis, I felt like it was super one-dimensional, and I have to admit it was probably one of the most difficult and elusive runes to kind of wrap my brain around. In fact, I remember Bandit and I emailing each other back and forth going, I'm not really sure about this one. However, the beauty of this rune is that the more you explore using it, the more creative its application gets. Cryonis actually allows for more accessibility and also more protection. If something is impassable, Cryonis helps you get through it, whether it's by lifting yourself to a higher place or pushing a gate open that would otherwise be impossible to move alone. It can also give you the ability to create a staircase, giving you access to higher platforms that have some pretty sweet chests or other treasures. Additionally, this rune can actually shield us from incoming attacks from those incredibly annoying Octoroks. I swear, I hate them. The challenge with this rune is rooted in its limitation. We can only engage it if there is water present in the environment. However, it's this very limitation that makes this rune so creative. So, how do we even begin to interpret this for us and our careers and lives? Well, it has to do with another perspective shift. If Magnesis is about examining objects or issues from different angles, then Cryonis prompts us to examine the actual environment that we're in. Our prompt question for Cryonis will be, is there anything in this situation that I can use to my advantage? Accepting and leaning into the limitations of Cryonis unlocks its possibilities. Similarly, taking advantage of the limitations of any situation actually opens up to the potential opportunities for ingenuity and creativity. I'll give you guys an example of mine where I had to engage Cryonis. In February of 2023, I was offered to run a music composition clinic for the Baltimore County Public School System. Over a 6-week period, 15 different middle and high schools were to schedule 4 sessions where I would lead workshops on how to write songs and music. And like any wonderful opportunity, this also had its challenges. I had 1 month to schedule 60 sessions within a 6-week period, and one of those weeks was spring break. And lastly, Baltimore County Public Schools runs on an A-B day schedule, and of the 15 schools, all but 4 classes were on B days, somewhere in between 8:30 in the morning and 11:30 in the morning. So availability was tight. So as you can see, the project came with a lot of challenges, and honestly, in the beginning I was thinking, this is not going the way I wanted. Applying Cryonis allowed me to see the circumstances of each class's environment as a creative opportunity rather than a restriction. And sure, look, it would have been a lot easier if every class was the same skill level with the same programs and technologies. But the reality of this situation is that it didn't matter what idealistic designs I had planned. Embracing that rather than complaining and working against it helped me realize that the goal was to give these students a similar feeling result. The goal wasn't to make these sessions run in an identical way. So the question became, what can I do for the students in this class to give them the best experience? Applying Cryonis ensured that each student had a really enriching experience that excited them. It made them proud, regardless of their skill level or the available technologies. And in the end, it taught me to be a more organic teacher and a more holistic musician. So anytime you're in a situation where you have to operate under limitations or restrictions, I want you to turn to Cryonis and I want you to ask yourself, how creative can I get? What are the inarguable facts of the situation? What are the expectations and conditions, and what's the time frame? What are my tangibles? Now, given these tangibles, you have to ask yourself, what can be done to reach the goal? Can I make this work, and how? Lastly, if you're looking at this information and it still won't work, don't be afraid to accept if the project or goal is not possible. Remember, no matter how creative Link is, he can't use Cryonis without water. Well, there you have it, guys. We have gone through all 4 runes from Breath of the Wild, and we have learned what lessons they left for us. Now, just to quickly review, for Magnesis, you want to ask yourself, can I look at this situation from a different angle? For bombs, are there any blockages that need clearing out? For Stasis, do I need to pause and assess? And then finally, Cryonis, is there anything in this situation or environment that I can use to my advantage? Chances are the runes will provide some insight and opportunities for change and innovation as they've done for Link. Remember, like the Sheikah Slate, your inventory isn't about external items, but also what you have access to no matter what's going on or where you are. Your runes are there to prompt a higher level thinking, and they're available to you even in situations where you may not have anything else. Your arsenal is always in your back pocket. Everything you need, you have. So if you're ever in a bind and you aren't quite sure what you should do next, check those runes. Thank you so much, guys, and remember, may the light illuminate your path.